Oh, yes. Good evening, everybody. That's not going to be the new standard intro to the show, but I'm back in my studio. I'm back with decent lighting, air conditioning, and the corner of the office where I'm going to get it out of the way right now. So everybody who comes in, where's Barnes? Okay, Barnes, we're doing it tomorrow night. Unforeseen delays, and we're going to do it tomorrow night. Tonight, I call up Groubert and I say, look, we're not going to reschedule the Sunday show because people come. And although many people are going to come and be very angry that they don't see Barnes tonight, they should be satisfied that they're going to have an equally intelligent encyclopedia of a brain replacement only for tonight, Mark Groubert. And it's Mark Groubert and not Eric Hunley together because this is an interview questions. This is a subject that I have wanted to discuss with Mark Groubert for as long as I've known that he has been heavily involved in addiction, in recovery. And I don't remember when I discovered this for the first time, but I called Groubert after I read or listened to Russell Brand's, I forget what the name of the book is. Is the book called Recovery? Anyhow, he's got insights. And this is not going to be a discussion from a perspective of gossip. And yeah, I'm not interested in gossip. We're going to have an interesting discussion about this. We're going to talk about a number of other things, Trump, DeSantis, politics, some law. But if you don't know who Mark Groubert is, you're going to know after tonight. He's amazing. Now, the thing is this. We're not also getting away without starting with something that's going to make your stomach turn. I'm going to do a little intro rant. Someone who might make you want to vomit as much as Trudeau, but it's not Trudeau. I'm going to thank my sponsor because many of you have seen now that this show contains a paid sponsorship, which it does. And then I'm going to bring in Mark Groubert. So now hold on. We're going to start with someone who might make you want to, give you a visceral reaction in the same way that Justin Trudeau does, but in a bit of a better way. I still think he has his moments of funniness, but he's unhinged. He's unhinged. Permanently, irreparably damaged from this medical diagnosis, which I believe is an iteration of actual issues called Trump derangement syndrome. Michael Rappaport, people, you may remember him from such classics. True Romance. He was Dick Ritchie in True Romance. He was in Copland. I forget who he was in Copland. That's all I can name right off the bat. To say he's been deranged by the Trump mind virus is an understatement. Listen to this.
Who cares that more people come out to see Pig Dick Donald Trump?
By the way, just remember, this is not the first time he has referred to Donald Trump as pig, whatever. When he refers to Marjorie Taylor Greene, horse mouth, or something along those lines, he uses the same stupid insults with each and every one of his online rants. But wait until he says at the end.
Who cares that people come to his rallies?
Who cares? I'm taking to Twitter to tell everybody. Who cares? Who cares? Who cares so much that I'm making an unhinged rant on Twitter?
We have better things to do. It's the middle of the fucking summer. Go to the beach.
He's channeling an AOC vibe without the AOC elegance. That stupid camera shake, like a TikTok camera shake.
Get a tan.
Get a tan. Go get a tan.
Sit in air conditioning.
Sit in air conditioning. Don't sit on the internet complaining about who cares because it's so worthless. Nobody should care. And here's how little they should care. Here's me unhinged for 35 seconds.
Who gives a fuck that more people come out to hear this motherfucker say the same bullshit over and over and over again? Look at all the people that come to the rallies. Who gives a shit?
Listen to somebody say the same thing over and over and over again. I once had a discussion with a brain scientist person, not my wife, who's a neuroscientist, if you don't know. And we were having a discussion like, is there a brain difference between a right-wing brain and a left-wing brain? I now believe there is. Not in the shape, maybe in the size, bada bing, bada boom. Left-wing, progressive, Democrat, liberal brains lack self-awareness, and they lack humility, and they lack the ability to have self-deprecating humor because they take themselves too seriously. That is the defining characteristic as far as I've seen. It's not true of everybody. It's just true as far as I can tell of a lot. Lack of self-awareness. No reflection, no insight, no say, hey, maybe is what I'm saying about, is my critique of Donald Trump true of myself? Okay. Rant over. We're going to be live on YouTube and Rumble and vivabarneslaw.locals.com. We're going to end on YouTube, go over to Rumble. And then we're going to end on Rumble and maybe have a little exclusive after party with Groubert if he's got time on Locals. Before I even bring in Groubert, my goodness, I forgot to bring in the sponsor of the evening, people. Oh, yes. When I was driving, I drove from West Virginia, the Clarion Hotel at the intersection of Harper's Ferry. I drove from West Virginia to Florida, to just north of Miami in one day, 1,700 and some odd kilometers. I don't know how many freedoms per eagle that is. All day, left at 6:45 in the morning, drove all day, got home at 11:15 at night with a kid in the car who was amazingly good, save a couple of meltdowns that we both had, and 2 dogs. Pudge only pooped once in the car. I couldn't get vegetables anywhere. I was on the road driving from Montreal down to Florida. Fresh vegetables? What's that? McDonald's doesn't serve salads anymore. Oh, I had to go to a Subway and just say, I don't want a sandwich. Just put the stuff you put in the sandwiches in a bowl. Don't put anything on it. Don't put onions in there. If there's onions in there, I'll destroy you. That's where I got my dose of vegetables. Oh my goodness. Many people don't know you're supposed to have 5 to 7 servings of raw fruits and vegetables a day. And most people do not have that, especially if you're driving and you can't get fresh fruits and vegetables on the road. Field of Greens. It is desiccated greens, not defecated, and not an extract, not a supplement. It is pulverized, dried up fruits and vegetables, power fruits and vegetables. 1 spoonful equals 1 serving of fruits and vegetables. All the antioxidants, all the good stuff. It's a great company, made in America, USDA organic, certified because it's a food, not a supplement, not an extract. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I prefer this. It tastes great. If you can believe it, it looks like swamp water, but swamp water is rich in nutrients. It tastes delicious. You have a spoonful of that twice a day. You've got 2 servings of fruits and vegetables. It's a healthy habit to have. And when you can't get raw fruits and vegetables, because fast food, it should be illegal for a fast food chain to not serve salads. I'm not a communist. That should be illegal. All right. Anyhow, so that's it. Thank you. As always, go to fieldofgreens.com. It'll push you to a Brickhouse Nutrition website. Promo code Viva, you'll get 15% off your first order. I think it's organic. I'm not sure if that's a joke. I'm pretty sure it's organic. The Field of Greens. Anyway, it's good. It's great. The link, if it's not there, it will be in the pinned comment. No, it's in the description. So that's it. All right. Groubert has been waiting patiently. Last time, warning. Tonight, Barnes not here tonight. Tomorrow night, 5 o'clock, will be the Sunday night show on a Monday. Tonight is Mark Groubert. Lord Buckley, America's Untold Stories with Eric Hunley. For those of you who don't know him, Groubert, you ready? Coming in 3, 2, 1. Booyah, sir. Hold on, let me bring you out here. Bring you in. What's going on? Do we like this better? I think we like this better. Yeah. So first of all, Mark, yes. You look clean shaven. You look 10 years younger than the last time I saw you.
Well, you're putting me on the spot here. First of all, I'm not Barnes. I just want to make Barnes is a rock star. I'm a piker. He's one of the great thinkers in America. I am just a guy who worships him. I've been asked to come in by Viva out of the bullpen in the first inning in a game where Barnes couldn't make it. I feel like I'm under a lot of pressure to try to make this work. There's a lot of hate in the room already. People are in their underwear. They're looking on how did this guy get in here? It's double-barrel Jew action today. This is not going to go well for the Nick Fuentes mob is already circling the building. I am not Barnes. I just want to say that I am doing Viva a favor. See the show tomorrow. I've come in at the last minute. Please don't hate on me. I'm just trying to help out. Thank you.
First of all, you sell yourself short, but I know, look, maybe you don't appreciate what an encyclopedia you are. Like Barnes is, he is the smartest person I've ever met in my life. And I'm not saying that to flatter my...
I agree. No, I agree. It's intimidating. I am a big fan. He's one of my political heroes. He's put me on, Alex Jones. I mean, he's done so much for me. I mean, this is the least I could do for him for not being here is filling in.
Well, and no, when I say first of all, I'm going to get to flattering you in a second, but like when I say Barnes is truly smart, it's not just retaining knowledge, it's contextualizing knowledge. And it's something that I'm incapable of doing. Like I cannot contextualize the information with the era. And he can do that by reading books, by appreciating the zeitgeist of the time in order to contextualize the information that he's able to retain. And it's amazing. That being said,
I'm still going over his rant about Barbie, and I'm a film school graduate. And I'm still analyzing what he said about Barbie.
Well, that being said, Groubert, you are, and I said this also, you're not to minimize and say you're like the brain of I say Hollywood. You are the brain of also conspiracy theory history, because it is not to be minimized as conspiracy theory. You have a brain as well that when you recount stories, you retain information, you walk through the rooms of the house in order to relay that information that you've gathered. So thank you for coming on. What did you say? What did you text me? You said it was 2 Live Judes, which is 2 Live Crews.
When I did there was a 2 Live Crew. Remember that?
Yeah.
Group?
Yes.
I did. I put on when I was at National Lampoon as an editor. We put on. We're invited down in New Orleans to Tulane and Loyola to put on the world's largest toga party with Otis Day and the Knights and blah blah blah. It was a huge thing. It was a huge charity event at Tulane on a football field, and that's a subject in one of our episodes on America's Untold Stories. If anybody wants to see that. But the night before, we put on possibly one of the worst show business performances in the history of show business. Myself and the group, dressed as Hasidic Jews with fur hats that we got in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, went down to the Deep South and put on a Yiddish rap group performance in front of a Southern crowd that had their mouths hanging open. I can only say like the producers segment of the producers where they put on Springtime for Hitler, Viva, and they were just staring at us like we were from another planet. But we called it 2 Live Jews, so that's where I got the reference from.
When I was growing up, and my first grandmother, my mother's mother, Grandma Ruth, she was a very is the word crotchety? She was a cranky old lady, and we were in a car. It was in Florida actually when we were 13 years old, and we were blasting 2 Live Crew. And then she says, "What is this music? Is this 2 Screw?" And we never forgot that. Groubert, for those who don't know, I think everybody does know, and I jacked up your mic a little bit because apparently my mic is low. 30,000 foot overview. I mean, people know who you are, but just in case. I mean,
investigative reporter. I worked for Village Voice, LA Weekly for about 15 years. Screenwriter in Hollywood, book author, Rehab Nation, the inside story about addiction in Hollywood. I wrote scripts about the CIA. I've been involved in Hollywood as a writer, producer, and occasionally director since the early 90s, I want to say, starting out in New York, coming out here in the mid 90s, and been doing TV, produced a lot of stuff for HBO. I produced theater in New York, Mambo Mouth with John Leguizamo, produced Mo Funny Black Comedy in America, the 90-minute documentary for HBO. If anybody wants to still see that, the history of African-American comedy, produced a bunch of stuff for HBO. And as a screenwriter, I've written screenplays like The Recruit with Colin Farrell and Al Pacino, which ended up in federal court with the CIA, which I got a settlement in that case regarding the CIA rewriting my script, which is part of the episodes on America's Untold Stories. An episode you can see on there involving me that I do with Eric Hunley twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. Now we've been doing it for almost 2 years, apparently coming up in October. So it's been a quick 2 years, man.
It's crazy that 2 years, and I don't know how long I've known Hunley for now. And you is the what you're writing about. I don't want to say anything that's not public, Mark. You are an aficionado of JFK Conspiracy, correct?
Okay, so I don't know, aficionado. I mean, a couple of years ago, I worked with Oliver Stone on a 5-part miniseries called Oswald, which was a 10-hour miniseries that I wrote with Oliver overseeing the writing as a director-writer with me. And we went around town trying to shop this project. And the shopping of the project alone is worth a documentary because of how many deep state operatives were in the room. We went to every single place in town. It became an event, just me and Oliver going around trying to sell this project, which was never sold. However, it bonded me with Oliver, and I did a couple of other projects for him and with him. One on LBJ that we haven't made, and one on RFK called RFK Must Die, about the assassination of RFK in 1968 in Los Angeles.
And we're gonna start with that before getting into. I told Hunley before we went live. I said, "Don't be offended. I didn't invite Eric as well." because this is a subject that I've been wanting to talk to you about. When I first got to know you, I had no idea your experience, your authorship, and your involvement in addiction and recovery in Hollywood. And I don't want the gossip. I want to talk about the principles about all of this. We're going to get into that after we get into the RFK. But after we flesh this out, you wrote a how many part miniseries or
on the Oswald one is 5 2-hour scripts on Oswald, beginning with his childhood and going to his death. So it's about 10 hours worth of material. It's 600 pages long, which we're going to try and do something with for this 60th anniversary. I'll just give you a teaser on that. It will involve these 10 hours of scripts that I've written, and we're going to try to do something really technologically advanced, let me just put it that way, for November 22nd of this year.
The teaser is out there, but now let me ask you the obvious question. You were shopping it with Oliver Stone, who has credentials of his own, and people didn't want to buy it. How does that work?
It works on multiple levels. It works on financial levels. It works on subject matter levels that are too hot to handle, Viva. It works on, people picking up the phone saying we don't want this to be made levels. I mean, there's a lot of levels, for why a project doesn't get made. In fact, the bulk of America's untold stories, truth be told, are failed movie projects of mine. The stories that I put out there on that show, a lot of them are movie ideas that didn't come to fruition because of Hollywood's reluctance to do anything that regular people would find to be interesting. Let me just put it that way.
Let me pick on the third one. You said people making calls and you pick up the phone and they say, we don't want this getting made. How does that, without getting into as much detail as you can?
I'll give you an example. We went into a room one time at National Geographic and nobody was there. We went in to have a meeting. There was nobody in the meeting room. And one British kid came in and said, whatever his name was, I'm here to represent National Geographic television. And in the middle of the table was a advanced speakerphone, one of those starfish looking things. And during the meeting, which went absolutely nowhere, we realized that there were people listening on the other end. And one of the stars of the movie picked up the speakerphone and started screaming into it, "We know you're out there listening. Why don't you have the courage to come into the room?" And that was Thomas Jane, the Punisher, who was supposed to play General Edwin A. Walker in the Oswald miniseries. And Tom just lost his shit and picked up the speakerphone and started screaming into it.
Fantastic. All right. Interesting.
Okay.
All right. Let's get
that's a side little story.
No. It's what's amazing is that it's beyond politics. It's beyond economics.
Yeah.
There's other.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's other things happening. Yeah.
Now, I was on Tim Pool Friday night, which is from where the rough area where I drove in 1,700 kilometers yesterday. I'm not your buddy guy. That we read two of your chats that night. So glad to see you on Tim Pool Friday. I brought up a subject on Friday night with Tim Pool. And we talked about the RFK assassination when we were talking about the initial story of RFK Jr. Being denied Secret Service protection. And I want to just make sure I didn't get any details wrong there. I think Hunley texted me and said some details, but I want to go over that a bit. And here's Eric Hunley in the house. Can we at least get one bushy head comment, Mark? Eric, you're too early. Come on, give him some time. That's Eric Hunley, your partner in crime at America's Untold Stories. All right, so Mark, we started talking about RFK Jr. being denied Secret Service protection as his request. They said, we're not 120 days out from the election yet. You don't need it. And we're making a public announcement. RFK Jr., hey, everybody, this mofo doesn't have Secret Service protection. I want to make a meme with that, actually. It should be the FBI pointing at RFK Jr. saying, this guy doesn't have a Secret Service protection. And I started talking about RFK Sr., his father's assassination, where Sirhan came up, MK Ultra came up. And the details where I think I made a mistake is I said that all of Sirhan's bullets, which were being discharged as he was being thrown to the ground, all 8 bullets were accounted for. And they did not include the fatal bullets, the fatal shots that struck RFK in the back of the head. And there's some suspicion, I forget the name of the guy, but you'll remember it now, that his newly appointed, I said Secret Service, but it might have just been regular security. The question is going to be, who hired that security? Was it government security or RFK's private security? That there was gunpowder residue indicating a contact discharge of a firearm. So tell me what details I got wrong there. and what the operating theory is on the RFK assassination.
Well, first of all, the guy you're mentioning is Thane Eugene Caesar, who was part of the security guard force for the hotel. It was his private security force that was hired by the hotel. Let me just put it that way. LAPD stayed away that night. LAPD claiming the RFK team requested they stay away. That's not true. The security team that was hired for the hotel involved a guy who was there for the first time, Thane Eugene Caesar. As soon as RFK says, and now it's on to Chicago and let's win there, there's a movement to get through the crowd. They realize that they can't go through the crowd the front way. They go around the back into the kitchen, where he is being led by Thane Eugene Caesar by the hand on a stack of trays, a tray stacking, one of those big silver tray stacking devices, Viva, is Sirhan, who jumps out from behind the tray stacking and begins shooting wildly into the crowd. The first shot hits a man right in the head, and the other shots, like you said, are shot wildly into the crowd. While this is going on, apparently, Thane Eugene Caesar takes out almost the exact same gun that is owned by Sirhan and puts a bullet to the head right behind the ear at touching, or I think less than 1 inch, according to Thomas Noguchi's flawless coroner's report, which he brought in members of each of the military services to oversee, claiming that he did not want to have another Dallas on his hands. This is Thomas Noguchi, the coroner of LA County. So in the coroner's report, which nobody read for years, including myself, everybody thought this was an open and shut case, Viva, because there were so many witnesses. So it turns out that the coup de grace was a bullet to the back of the head of RFK because of the stippling, and because you're talking about gun residue evidence yesterday. I was trying to talking to you about this. The stippling and the charcoal effect of the gun blast on the back of the head indicated to Noguchi that it was with a 1/2 inch, or actually touching the back here of the head, right here. There's also a shot under the armpit that goes up into the ceiling, also at the same angle as Thane Eugene Caesar standing in back of him and shooting upward in an upward direction. He spins around RFK, and while he's spinning around, he pulls off the tie of Thane Eugene Caesar, clutching it in his hands, almost demonstrating that this is the man who shot me. And he goes down to the ground onto his back, falling onto Thane Eugene Caesar with the tie of Thane Eugene Caesar in his right hand. As he dies, he releases the tie onto the ground. Thane Eugene Caesar will later come back 2 hours later to get that tie. But there's photos by LAPD and UPI and Associated Press of the tie laying next to RFK's body. Now, as Sirhan is firing wildly, they're banging his hand against the steam table. And that's why the shots that are all accounted for go into various people in back of RFK. And one of them goes into the divider of the pantry double doors of the pantry. And that is accounted for. That's dug out by an FBI agent named Bailey, who sees the hole and will later write about it in his memoirs. So you've got bullets in the ceiling panels removed by LAPD. You've got the body with the angles of a perfect, what many people call the perfect autopsy. Noguchi is then attacked by LAPD. He's smeared, he's fired, he lawyers up, he gets his job back. He goes to testify during the case of Sirhan. He's interrupted on the stand and told that he doesn't have to go any further into the details of his coroner's report. And the cover-up begins at that point, more deeply going up the ladder. And that's like just a thumbnail sketch of the event.
All right, now I would not to spend the entire evening on this, just get some obvious questions out of the way. If all of Sirhan's bullets are accounted for, that would mean, was it a revolver that Sirhan had?
Yeah, that's right.
So would that not mean then that it is known, or it's relatively easily demonstrable, that there were 10 shots fired and not just 8?
Well, there's also an audio recording which CNN itself said it was 13 shots, 12, 13 shots. And CNN played the recording of a Polish journalist who recorded the events. And you can clearly hear the shots being recorded on his tape recorder. Even CNN, I think in 1998 or 2002, tried to get the case reopened, but there was a attorney general in the state of California who refused to look into it, and she is now the vice president of the United States.
Interesting. All right. And the other question that I had was Thane Eugene. What was his name?
Thane Eugene Caesar.
Thane Eugene Caesar. That's an interesting last name. What was his history? Is his history known? Like
his history was that he worked for George Wallace's campaign in 1968. He was a Kennedy hater. He was a known racist, failed security guard. He worked had a defense clearance at Grumman and also at Burbank at Skunk Works. He was a defense contractor. They said he was a plumber, but he had a little bit more on his plate than just being a plumber at Skunk Works here in Burbank, where they built the U-2 spy plane.
Okay, good. So I didn't get that. The only detail I got wrong is I said Secret Service, but he was private security hired by RFK's team.
No. He was not hired by RFK's team. He was hired by the hotel.
Okay. Good enough. Okay. Well, that's it. That's the detail that's been clarified, people. Okay. And everyone out there, everyone watching now, you and Eric have to get on Tim Pool, because I know, first of all, they talk about a lot of these stories, and it's a must. It's a must. So everyone watching, tweet it out.
Well, just to add a little bit more to it, the guy who was shot in the first shot that went into a person went into the skull, the temple of Paul Schrade, an old friend of ours. And Paul Schrade was a United Auto Workers executive who was a big Kennedy family supporter, was tied into the Kennedy family, very close friend of RFK Jr. And Paul Schrade and I kind of bonded on reopening the case. Paul Schrade passed away earlier this year in the mid 90s. And Paul Schrade, to his death, insisted that RFK was not killed by Sirhan. In fact, he went so far as to call for the release of Sirhan for almost 20 years. And in fact, I represented Paul Schrade at Sirhan's parole hearing with RFK Jr. a little over a year ago. And that's how I know RFK Jr. is through the parole hearing, where both of us testified on Sirhan's behalf. And the parole board agreed with me that he should be released. And in fact, shockingly, they voted to grant him parole. The parole then went to Governor Newsom, who overrode his own parole board in refusing to release Sirhan, claiming he was still a clear and present danger at the age of 75 to the general public, having served 58 years in prison, possibly longer than any other person in California, save one. And the Kennedy sisters came out and denounced RFK Jr. And the reason it's important is because it has nothing to do with vaccines. It has nothing to do with Democratic or any sort of things that he's been tarred by his own family. The two sisters came out and said that that Sirhan could possibly Uber from Pasadena, where he lived, to Malibu and kill them. And Newsom said that this was a clear and present danger and refused the parole of Sirhan. That is how I know RFK Jr.
Maybe a question I'll ask Barnes tomorrow is why even have another parole hearing if Newsom has indicated clear and present danger, regardless of what the parole board says, he'll be there for the rest of his life.
Well, again, he was found guilty and sentenced to the death penalty. The death penalty was overturned in 1970. He was given life with parole. I just want to emphasize that it was not life without parole. He was resentenced to life with parole and has been turned down over a dozen times for the parole.
All right, before we head over to Rumble exclusively, Rumble and Locals, I'm going to just read a few more of the chats that we have here. Pasha Moyer says, Lord Buckley, you are not Barnes, but remember, Barnes is also not you. I very much appreciate your long relief appearance. And we got, hold on, what happened here?
I got to do the middle innings. I got to do the middle innings. Go ahead. Sure.
That's a baseball joke. I get. Oh, Mark, I forgot to ask, how old are you? I know how old you are. You're not answering.
Sorry, I lost content. Sorry.
All right, people, let's go over to Rumble right now. Here's the link. There are 1,176 people watching on YouTube. Migrate over to Rumble, people. Or if you don't want to go over to Rumble for whatever the crazy reason, come on over to Locals, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. We're going to carry this on now. We're going to go to the second part of your life and your expertise, addiction recovery, and questions I've always wanted to ask you. All right, ending on YouTube,